Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes here and thank you for joining me for today's random horror review. Today's movie is a relatively fresh one, only from last year, so this was actually only my second time checking out this movie, but it is one that made my top 10 favourite horror movies of 2025 video, came in at my number 10, so today's movie is titled Strange Harvest. Yeah, so getting into the plot for this movie, I guess I should quickly specify before going into the plot. This movie is formatted as a faux horror documentary or mockumentary, however you want to word it. It's basically a fictional true crime documentary. I guess that's the best way to word it. But, we're following these investigators and police trying to find this serial killer known as Mr. Shiny, who did these sadistic murders through the 90s, had a 15-year break, and now he has resurfaced in the 2010s, because that's when this documentary takes place. But it's all set up, as I said, like a true crime documentary, and it feels very realistic. Like, this is the most realistic faux documentary that I've seen in a while. It feels exactly like the Netflix true crime docos that, people binge watch all the time. I think the only thing that makes it different is that it's very gory, very brutal. They don't hold back on showing you the more gruesome side of things. Later on in the plot, it starts to go in a different direction, sort of leaning into something a little bit more fantastical or cosmic, but I won't get into that too much just to prevent spoilers. The best way I'd think to describe this movie, like a blend between the Poughkeepsie Tapes, Saw, Seven, something like that. So it's sort of a hard one to break down the plot for, because it's just pretty much interviews with police officers who were on the case, speaking to experts on certain topics, found footage elements and police cams and things like that. So it is a bit hard to break down the plot for this one, but all you really need to know is you're pretty much learning about the investigation on a serial killer known as Mr. Shiny. So let's get into my thoughts of Strange Harvest from the year 2025. So getting into the things that I do like about Strange Harvest, again, to quickly reiterate, I really like how realistic it feels to one of those true crime documentaries, one of those ones that you would stumble upon through Netflix and then next minute everyone's watching it and it's going viral, things like that. It feels very accurate to that. I feel like the cast in this movie do a very good job at feeling real and believable, because that is a big part of feeling immersed in this type of film. Once the acting's off or something doesn't feel genuine, it can take you out, but I feel like the cast in this movie do a very good job at feeling believable and immersing you in it. This is probably one of the most realistic horror faux documentaries that I've seen personally, probably since Lake Mungo or Poughkeepsie Tapes, for example. It just does a very good job at feeling real. But rewatching it this time around, it didn't quite hit the same as it did the first time. But it's still a very good movie. I think the biggest factor of that is the first time I saw this movie, like I said, this was only a second time watch, but the first time I saw this movie was for last year, putting together my top 10 list, and I think I saw it late November, mid-November, something like that, and we're now in February, so it's only been 3 months, give or take. I think if a little bit more time had gone by, I think it would have been beneficial, because there are a lot of reveals and, there's a big mystery of who Mr. Shiny is and, the case and everything going on. And all of that was still fairly fresh in my mind. So I think if a little bit more time had gone past before going back to rewatch, I think that would have been beneficial. Like I said, I still think this movie is really good. And it was definitely a more unique film from last year, but with it being so fresh, I think a little bit more time passing would have been beneficial. But then also, while I was watching this movie, I had the thought, with this feeling so close to a genuine true crime documentary, how often do you actually go back and rewatch a real-life true crime documentary? Because when I had that thought to myself, I really couldn't think of another example of one that I have gone back and rewatched. I'm thinking now, the only one that does cross my mind is Tiger King, but the only reason I went back and rewatched that was purely for the memes and watching Joe Exotic. I found that to be entertaining as fuck. But other than that, I don't really go back and watch true crime documentaries, so I think potentially that could have been a factor as well. But with all that being said, again, the format of this movie is just executed really well. I really enjoy like the interviews. Again, the cast do a great job at feeling realistic. The found footage elements, the experts being called in to do analysis on certain topics and things like that. I found all that to be really engaging and really well executed. Mr. Shiny as a serial killer is creepy as fuck. His look is very simple but effective. I feel like if he was a killer within another horror movie with a different format, like insert him in a slasher franchise, I feel like a character like him would take off, and everyone would be wearing Halloween masks of Mr. Shiny and things like that. But I just feel like it's too niche of a movie for that. But I still find him to be a very engaging serial killer, and the mystery going on with his character I found to be really entertaining. I also just like how it's willing to go extremely brutal and gory with the kills. There's a whole different range of things that have taken people out and things like that, and I guess we'll go into it. He also sort of has this Zodiac killer thing about him, of how he sends in letters to the police, and getting into these letters, they're all handwritten and they're not very clearly written. The handwriting is a bit messy, which I can work with, that's fine. But they do these voiceovers reading through segments of the letter that they want to get across to the viewer. But they do this voiceover that isn't very clear, and it's kind of hard to understand what they're saying. I wish they did a more clear voice for that, because every time it came up to one of those letters, I found myself kind of pausing it and trying to reread the handwriting myself, just because the voice, it wasn't very clear, and I found that to be annoying. But otherwise, he has a lot to do with leeches as well, so I found the leech stuff to be very cool and just unique, I guess. I didn't know where to clump that in, so I'll clump that in with Mr. Shiny. The first half of this movie, like I said, is very straightforward. It just has that true crime feel to it, with like a brutal edge to it, this cult edge to it as well. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Towards the second half, or maybe even just like the last quarter of this movie, that's where it sort of goes more into this fantastical, cosmic direction. Now, I kind of feel like that will be the moment that will lose some people. Like, if you're already bought into this movie, maybe it's enough to like just keep you going to the end. But if the cosmic fantastical side of this story isn't for you, I can definitely see that being the moment that will take you out of it. Even my first time seeing this movie, that was the part that like I wasn't too sure how to think about it, but rewatching it this time around, that was actually my favorite part of this movie. I think it's just because it's not a crazy tone switch. It still feels like you're watching a true crime documentary, but it just feels so much more out there. It just feels refreshing compared to what we've sat through up until that point. So this time around, it actually worked with me a lot more. I don't know what else I want to say about this movie, so I'll start wrapping up and giving my rating for Strange Harvest. During my top 10 video, I gave this an 8 out of 10. Honestly, I'm probably going to stick with the same rating, an 8 out of 10. It has the potential to probably be higher. I think like my biggest mistake here was just rewatching it so soon, since my first time checking it out. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 4 years down the track, I'll rewatch it and it'll be the same, still an 8 out of 10 or something like that. But I think just knowing the mystery and knowing the elements and the clues and everything that are still pretty fresh in my mind from the first time watching this movie, I think that's a factor. And again, let me know in the comments, do you rewatch true crime documentaries? Because I think low key that may have been a factor as well. How often do you just want to rewatch a true crime episode of something that you've already seen before? I don't think that's very common. But with all that being said, this movie's still very good. It's very unique compared to a lot of the movies that are coming out in the found footage faux documentary genre. This one just feeling so realistic, I think gives it a level above others. But gonna leave it there. Like I said, 8 out of 10 for Strange Harvest. Let me know your thoughts of it if you've checked out this movie for yourself. Like I said, it only came out last year, so I'm not sure how many eyes have gotten onto this movie, but I do recommend it, especially for those who are fans of found footage and true crime, I guess, as well. But thank you for joining me for today's review, guys, and I'll see you for another video soon. Peace.